Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at RIP version 2 authentication. Now, RIP version 2 is going to give us two different types of authentication. We're going to have plain text, and we are going to have MD5. Now, regardless what type of authentication we use, we're going to have to use a keychain in order to hold that password. So what's going to happen is that RIP, again, regardless whether you're using plain text or MD5, is going to use that keychain essentially to store the password that we're going to send up. Which, in reality, yes, it's a little bit more that you guys have to learn how to type, but what's cool is you can do things like rotating keys. You can have multiple keys throughout different durations and different times. I'll show you the syntax for that. But regardless, you're going to need to do the keychain. Okay? So, and this is actually something that throws people off. They try to do plain text authentication without a keychain, and they just can't figure it out. This is actually the default mode here. And once you apply the keychain to the interface, it's going to automatically set itself to plain text authentication. You would have to change that to MD5. So let's actually take a look. What we're going to do is get a basic neighborship up between router 2 and router 4. So let's do that. We'll say config T, router RIP version 2, no auto, and spell like a normal human. Wow. And we'll say network 10.0.0.0, and we'll say redistribute connected. We'll say passive interface default, and I'll say no passive E01. Do show run section router RIP, and just because we like cheating, we'll go ahead and pop this over on router 4. And bam, do debug IP packet. What we should see is we should see us start sending multicast packets on 224.0.0.9. Any minute now. We may only see it every 30 seconds. Let's also do a do debug IP RIP. There we go. So here you can see that we are actually sending traffic on 224.0.0.9. So debug IP packet is another debug command that we can see to check to make sure that we're actually starting the process and actually sending our updates. Let's say do on all. And if I say do show IP route RIP, I should see the loopback addresses to router 2. That's fantastic. That's what I wanted. If I say do show IP route RIP, I should see the loopback addresses for router 4, and that's fantabulous. So let's get authentication actually up and running. First thing I need to do is I need to create my keychain, right? Because the keychain is the requirement. So I'm going to say key space chain, and I need to give it a name, right? So when you see word, it doesn't mean it wants word. It wants an actual name. So we're going to say RIP, and we'll say version 2. Now, here I have really not many options other than the key. Now here, when I say key, I'm going to have a long string of numbers that I can provide. So I can have, multiple keys if I want to, and this is where we talk about rotating keys. So I'm going to say key 1, and I'm going to say key string, and this is essentially what my password is going to be. So we'll say 2016 underscore password, and I'll hit enter. Now, I have a few other options that I want to show you here, and this is the accept lifetime and the send lifetime. When we do rotating keys, we're going to want to use these both. So we'll say accept lifetime, and what this is going to want is this is going to want the hour, the minutes, the time. What we're essentially doing is telling one device, which in this case is going to be router 2, look, when you are sent a RIP update, I want you to accept these keys for how long of a time? When do I want you to start accepting these keys? Okay, because I don't have to start accepting the key right now at whatever time it is. I can, 10:30, in the morning on Wednesday or whatever day it is. I can start accepting it tomorrow or a week from now. I don't see why you would do that, but you never know. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify the hour. So for me, generally speaking, when I do rotating keys, I'll do something like 23:50 and 00. So essentially what this is saying at 11:50 at night on January, you don't have to do capitals, you can do all lowercase, January, and what day? So I could say January 1st of 2016, which is, this current year. Okay, that's when I want to start accepting this key. When do I want to, I could say the duration here, and I could give it how many seconds, but that doesn't help you all that much. What's better is that you can do an actual time. So what I would do is I would say 23:50, okay, at whatever date. So essentially I want to stop this. So maybe the organization wants this on a monthly basis, in which case you would need 12 keys. Maybe we want to do this on a 6-month basis, so maybe we would do this in July. Maybe it's a yearly basis, so let's go with that. Let's go with a year. So we'll say December, and the iOS is nice. It tells you how many days there are if you forget, and it lets you know how far you can go. So you can see when we hit 2035, we'll have to upgrade our iOS code. So we'll say 2016, and there's our accept lifetime. So if I say do show run section key, what's going to happen is this device is going to start sending this key. It's going to accept it during this time frame, okay? Now we also want to send it during this same time frame. So I'm going to say, look, I want you to send it essentially at this same time. So do show run section key. Now these don't have to be the same. You can change these, but 2 tips. Whatever you set the send lifetime to, so essentially right now we're on router 2 and I'm saying, look, I want you to send this key within this time frame. Leave yourself a gap on the other router. So on the other router, just in case your time might be a little bit off, just in case maybe your NTP server, maybe R4 is a little bit late in getting that time, maybe you want to tell R4 to accept the key, maybe at 22 or 23:45. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to have a 5-minute gap in between when router 2 is going to start accepting the key and maybe when router 4 is going to start sending the key. You want to leave yourself some type of a gap. Now, as we rotate the key, so let's actually set up a rotating key. So we'll say key 2, and I'm going to say keychain. And this time I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do, let's say 2017 underscore password, because this is going to be the password that we use for 2017. But I'm going to go ahead and install the question mark. Now, most of you may have caught what I did there. So let's actually try this again. So I'm gonna change the password here, and notice what happens when I start trying to hit the question mark here. It says, well, you don't have anything else you can type because iOS thinks I'm asking it a question. But now watch. Oops, my bad. So we'll say, there we go. Oh boy, gracious. There we go. So now that I've actually spelt right and not had typos, you can see that now this time the iOS did not think I was asking it a question. And the reason is because I used the Control plus V. So you can come in here and you can say Control plus the V key on your keyboard, and that keystroke is essentially going to break the iOS from thinking you're asking it a question. So what you would do is, let me reset this one more time. Here you can see that we're asking it a question, and it's saying, yeah, there's nothing else you can type there because it doesn't understand that we want to add the question mark into our password. You would hold down the control key, press the V key at the same time. You can see that I held them down for a second there just to show you that's the keystroke essentially that we're going to get, right? But if you just do it quickly, word, and we say Control V, just as if you were in a Windows machine and you were going to copy paste, so Control V, and then you do Shift question mark, it will actually accept the question mark, okay? Now, do show run section key, and what we want to do is we want to set up an accept lifetime essentially for the same thing. The only difference is that we're going to make this 2017, okay? Same thing with the send lifetime. We want to send this the same time period, but we're going to do this for 2017. So let's go and do this here. And we'll say Control C, show run section key. So here is a rotating key. So now we have one key for 2016, and then we have another key for 2017. And what's going to happen is that the device is going to start accepting this key between 10 minutes on January 1st. And then we're going to, so this would be 11:59 on January 1st. So it would essentially be 10 minutes before January 2nd, right? If I wanted this to include the whole year, this would be December 31st. In case any of you are wondering, I'm just completely coming up with these dates. So don't get all technical on me that, the time isn't right exactly. This is a demo, right? Some of you guys get way too carried away sometimes. Let's copy this. We'll put this on router 4. Okay, so there's a rotating key again. All right, now what we need to do is we need to apply this on the interface. So we're going to say config T, and there's no spot under the global RIP process to enter the authentication. Where we need to do it is again on the interface, which in our case here is going to be our Ethernet 01 interface on both router 4 and router 2. So we'll say interface E01. And as I was saying before, if I say IPRIP and then type the authentication command, I have 2 commands. And by default, once I apply the keychain, what's going to happen is that automatically the mode is going to be set to plain text. That is the default, and that confuses people. So let's go back up, and we're going to say our RIPv2 keychain. Okay, let's say do debug IPRIP, and let's go over to router 4, and we're going to say do debug IPRIP, and we'll let that crank for a minute. If I go back over here and say do show IP protocol, we can see if we go down to RIP, you can see that RIP has now told us, hey, the keychain that we're using is going to be RIPv2. So if we have multiple keychains installed, we don't have to hunt through. RIP IP protocol will tell us exactly what keychain we are actually using. Okay, now that we've enabled authentication, we should see that both routers are now saying invalid authentication, okay? Because we no longer have the proper key. Let's say do show run all, and I'm going to say, let's actually turn off this debug. We'll say do on all, and I'm going to say do show run all, and I'm going to say include interface Ethernet 01. Didn't seem to like it. Do show run all. Include interface, learn how to spell, Ethernet 01. And did we not just apply? Yeah, it didn't seem to like the run all, huh? Interesting. Okay, well, at this point, let's see if we can run this again, because I want to try to get you to see this. Do show run all, let's say begin interface. Let's do that. That would probably work better. Yeah, there we go. All right, so you can see here that it says, hey, we're running, our keychain is RIP version 2, but take a look at the mode. The mode is going to be plain text, okay? So at this point, we're passing just a regular plain text password between these devices. Now, I can change this if I want to, and I would use this same command. I would say IPRIP Authentication Mode, and you can see that I have two options. So I can say MD5 or I can say text. Again, this being the default. So now if I say MD5, let's head over to router 4. We still have the debug working, so let's say do show IP. And you can see that we still have a invalid authentication running here. Let's say I do debug, we'll say IP packet, and you can see here that we can still see the packets going back and forth, but again, RIP is letting us know, hey, invalid authentication, I'm going to ignore this inbound update. So let's go over to router 4, we'll say do on all, and let's say do show run interface E01, and what we will do is we should have, let's say exit, do show run section key, make sure the key is actually set up properly, which it is. So let's say interface E01, I'm just popping these commands. Interface E01, let's paste these in. Let's say do show run all, begin interface Ethernet 01. So now we have our MD5 and our keychain. Let's say do debug IP RIP, and let's actually watch our update come in. Let's see what happens. And so we sent an update there. So you can see that right now RIP is complaining that these routes are possibly down because we haven't gotten our update yet. So let's see what's going on. Let's say do show IP protocol and see when our next update is due in. Right now it's 17 seconds. Oh, there we go. Do on all. So we just sent one. And you can see that now it tells us, hey, that we've accepted this password with MD5, or in other words, we've received this packet with MD5 authentication. Now, this will let us know the same thing if we take off the MD5. If we set this back to text, so if I say interface E01 and I say IP RIP Authentication Mode text, and I quickly head over to router 4 and do the same thing, essentially before those packets come in, IP RIP auth mode text. See when our next update in, that's 20 seconds. Oops. And this guy's in 27 seconds. So let's say do debug IP RIP, and let's just hang out for a minute. Because what we're going to see is that RIP is nice enough in the debug command to let us know whether we've actually gotten that password. But I mean, again, when it comes to plain text authentication, you know, we received a packet with text authentication, and yeah, there's the password, right? So not really secure, because RIP is actually going to send this password in clear text, and you can find the same in the in your packet capture. So when you're using authentication, make sure that you use MD5. Very, very simple configuration. Just don't forget that they both require the keychain.